Hey guys, everyone and their mother on social media has been hyping up rosemary oil for hair growth. At this point, you've probably seen somebody telling you should go out and try rosemary oil, or if you don't like the idea of putting oil in your scalp, maybe try rosemary water. I have a few videos talking about rosemary oil and rosemary water for hair growth. Cut to the chase. The research to back it up is pretty limited. It's no secret, hair loss is really common, and a lot of people deal with it, and it can really impact your self-esteem. It can be very distressing to go through. And as you're going through that distress, guess what you are? A prime target for someone to sell you something that may or may not work. In today's video, we're going to talk about an ingredient that actually has a decent body of research to support its use as a topical for targeting hair loss. What ingredient is this, you might ask? Melatonin. Yes, that's right. Now, I have some other videos on melatonin for the skin, for example, for anti-aging, so definitely check those out. If you aren't familiar, melatonin is a hormone that is largely made by the pineal gland in your brain, but it's also made in other organs, including your skin. And there are a variety of receptors for melatonin, not only in your skin, but also in your hair. Now, melatonin is an antioxidant, it's anti-inflammatory, and when applied to the skin, there's evidence to show that it can help mitigate the damage that occurs upon exposure to certain environmental stressors, mainly ultraviolet radiation, which damages the hair and can contribute not only to premature skin aging, but may play a role in hair loss disorders as well. Now, as a hormone, melatonin is key for regulating our circadian rhythm. A lot of people have looked at topical melatonin for a specific type of hair loss, androgenetic alopecia. Now, androgenetic alopecia is a type of hair loss that a lot of men and women deal with. It has a genetic component, meaning you inherit a tendency towards developing it. Androgenetic alopecia is a type of hair loss where you have a progressive decrease in the density of hair. The hair is progressively miniaturized, turning from a coarse terminal hair into a little baby hair. For androgenetic alopecia, scientists have established that formation of free radicals plays a key role in triggering programmed cell death in hair follicle cells, and ultimately that is another factor that contributes to the miniaturization of the hair and hair loss in androgenetic alopecia. Set oxidative stress as well as dysfunction in antioxidant enzymes that leads to alopecia. Because melatonin receptors are present in the hair follicle, and melatonin clearly plays a role in hair growth and the hair growth cycle, people have been interested in melatonin for its role in treating androgenetic alopecia for some time. Again, it is an antioxidant and may help in reducing the burden of oxidative stress that can lead to premature hair loss, especially in those with androgenetic alopecia. A recent paper was published that really aimed to dive into the research on melatonin for androgenetic alopecia. They performed an extensive PubMed, Google Scholar, and Cochrane database review for papers published up until 2022, looking at melatonin for hair loss. They identified 11 studies with evidence of melatonin for patients with hair loss. Overall, these data represented 2,267 patients. 8 of these studies demonstrated positive outcomes in terms of hair loss in patients who had androgenetic alopecia with topical melatonin use. In addition, 8 studies also showed an improvement in scalp hair growth with topical melatonin, and 4 studies demonstrated an improvement in hair density compared with controls. And an additional 2 studies demonstrated that topical melatonin bested controls for an improvement in hair thickness. A lot of these studies showed improvement in hair texture as well as a decrease in hair loss. So I have to interject here because people left and right are hyping up rosemary oil for hair loss and for hair growth based on one small study. Here we have 11 with topical melatonin. Why are brands not focusing their efforts when they try to develop a hair loss serum around melatonin rather than chasing after rosemary oil? Why might that be? When you rely on brands to produce products to address a hair or skin concern, don't assume that they're going to go after things that have a good track record or proven to work. They may be more inclined, especially these days in social media, to formulate products based on what people are searching for, what is being hyped up on social media, what consumers are asking for. And so for that reason, you see a lot of repetition in the hair serum market, serums that have a variety of botanic extracts with limited evidence. Remember, brands create products that people want to buy. People don't know they want to buy something if they're not aware of it. People are aware these days of rosemary oil. It's been hyped up in all sorts of circles around hair loss. That's something that people are searching for. There are a lot of content creators who talk about rosemary oil. Rosemary oil is a lot more Googleable, which is an attractive feature for a brand developing a product. From the first comment that you get about your hairline receding, a brand is going to be there waiting just for you to hit the key looking for their product. Rosemary oil is something people are searching for. It doesn't mean it's necessarily the most effective thing out there. Is topical melatonin the most effective thing out there? Absolutely not. When it comes to stuff you can buy in the store and use for, in this case, androgenetic alopecia, the most evidence-based treatment option is going to be minoxidil. It's actually FDA approved for the treatment of androgenetic alopecia. But a lot of people don't tolerate minoxidil. It can be very irritating. And when you stop it, the results that you got while using it, you'll just go back to baseline. So people want to seek out more natural remedies, alternatives, other options. So anybody who has decided they're not interested in minoxidil, maybe because you've tried it, it didn't work, it's too irritating, or you're just simply not interested in minoxidil, guess what? You two are a group that brands are going to heavily market to. I encourage everyone who's going through hair loss to see a board-certified dermatologist. There are a lot of different types of hair loss out there, and getting the right diagnosis is key. Some types of hair loss, which I've covered on this channel, such as telogen effluvium, can and often do spontaneously resolve with no intervention. So why waste your time, money, and efforts on something that may not be necessary in the long run? What dose did they actually use in these studies? This is key. You may be tempted to go to your health food store, Whole Foods, or whatever, and buy a melatonin supplement and rub it on your head, open it up if it's a capsule, or take it out if it's a liquid and smear it on your scalp. But remember, in order for this to work, it has to get into the hair follicle, penetrate well. So just going out and buying a dietary supplement and putting it on your head, probably not going to get the same results. What is the best dose of melatonin for hair loss? Well, according to this study, across all of the research that has been done, doses that are used in these studies range anywhere from 0.0033% upwards to 0.1% melatonin. How often should you apply it? Well, in these studies, they're applying it once a day. When applied once a day, how long do you have to use it before you can start seeing results? Based on the research, anywhere from 90 to 180 days of daily use. However, hair growth may be observed as early as 30 days after starting using it. So if you start seeing results, how long do you have to use it for to maintain those results? And if you stop it, do you end up losing the hair that you grew while using it? These are questions we don't really have good answers to, because while there's a lot more research to support topical melatonin for androgenetic alopecia in comparison to, say, rosemary oil, we still don't have enough research out there to really say for sure how best to approach the use of topical melatonin for androgenetic alopecia. And again, all of the studies here are really looking at androgenetic alopecia. You may have some other type of hair loss. Don't just assume that melatonin or any other hair loss treatment is going to be effective for you. That's why I emphasize seeing a board-certified dermatologist and getting an accurate diagnosis as to what your underlying hair loss is. That's going to be the best approach. That way you know what you're dealing with and what the best treatment options are. Are all forms of topical melatonin created equal? Probably not. Some research suggests that topical melatonin delivered in nanostructured lipid carriers is probably more effective. That's topical melatonin. Lots of research suggesting that more research is needed looking into topical melatonin in terms of its efficacy for androgenetic alopecia. But what about oral melatonin, taking it by mouth? The research there is pretty sparse. There is one small study on oral melatonin for androgenetic alopecia. And by small, I mean 10 subjects. The subjects took 1.5 milligrams of oral melatonin twice a day. And by day 180, participants showed an increase in hair growth and a significant increase in the number of terminal hairs. So with oral melatonin, this paper suggests maybe it may help in getting those baby hairs back into terminal hairs. But that's it. That's a very small study. Another study, however, showed that patients who have hair loss from chemotherapy got no benefit from taking oral melatonin. They didn't have any improvement in hair growth or hair loss, which just further illustrates that not all hair loss is the same, okay? Each type of hair loss responds differently to different types of treatments. So overall, the evidence for oral melatonin is very limited, and too limited to say for sure if it's going to be effective for improving hair loss. And of course, with oral melatonin, there are the potential for more systemic side effects than just applying it to the scalp. With oral melatonin, you're not going to get those benefits of protecting against UV that you might with a topical. And with oral melatonin, one of the real issues in terms of delivery to the skin is that it gets significantly metabolized through first pass metabolism in the liver. So it's not as though you're able to get appreciable amounts localizing to the skin or hair follicle taking an oral supplement. So can I recommend a good melatonin for hair? No, I can't. Because, again, the research is still pretty limited. While there is a lot more research for topical melatonin for androgenetic alopecia in comparison to rosemary oil, which has gotten a lot of hype on social media, there's still a lot more research that needs to be done. And a brand could claim, oh, we've got a melatonin serum for hair growth, for hair loss, but that doesn't mean that their serum has necessarily been put into these trials looking at improvement in hair growth density. So to say for sure whether or not one brand's melatonin hair serum would work or not, they would need to do good clinical trials, which you're unlikely to get from cosmetic products like hair growth serums. Whenever I talk about topicals for hair loss, people often ask about, what about eyebrows? What about eyelashes? There isn't any research on topical melatonin for brow growth or lash growth. So if somebody tries to come out with a lash serum or a brow serum with melatonin in it, there's just no research yet to support its use for those things. And remember, the research that we have showing benefit for hair growth is all in people with androgenetic alopecia, which if you're dealing with hair loss, that might not be the type of hair loss that you have. A lot of people struggle with something called telogen effluvium, massive hair shedding after a stressful life event. Now, on the end slate, I have a very recent video talking all about hair shedding, otherwise known as telogen effluvium, after massive weight loss. So check that video out next if you missed it. But if you like this one, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.